One of the callings of the prophets was to call the people back to God. And in order to do that, they had to point out the people's sin. And Amos was called by God to do that for the nation of Israel, the northern tribes. And so we're going to see that sometimes God's people are called to mourn at what they see going on around them. In Amos chapter 6 and verse 1, he says, "Woe to them that are at ease in Zion and trust in the mountains of Samaria." Woe to those who are at ease. In other words, they're living as if nothing is wrong, and yet everything is wrong. He goes on and he talks about all of their lifestyle, lavish, luxurious lifestyle that they lived. And in verse 6 he says that drink wine in bowls and anoint themselves with the chief ointments, but they are not grieved for the affliction of Joseph. Now, Joseph is the father of Ephraim, and it is a title for those northern tribes, Joseph. But it also reminds us of Jacob's son Joseph. And if we go back to the book of Genesis and we remind ourselves of what happened with Joseph, God chose Joseph to save his family. And he gave him some dreams which Joseph shared, and his brothers just hated him for it. And we read in Genesis 37:23, it says, "It came to pass when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him, and they took him and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty, there was no water in it, and they sat down to eat bread." And then they decide that they're going to sell Joseph into slavery, but they wanted to kill him. And so they really didn't care much or show much love to Joseph. Later, in Genesis 42, verse 21, when they realize that they run out of food and Jacob sends them to Egypt, they meet Joseph, but they don't know who he is. And they wind up finding themselves in trouble. And it says in verse 21, they said one to another, "We are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us." And so here they're feeling guilty. But there was a time that they could care less what was going on with Joseph. They put him in a pit, they sold him into slavery, they went off and told his dad that he was killed, and they completely forgot about him. And that's what Amos says is going on in his day. He says, you live in this luxurious lifestyle, and you're not paying any attention at all. They're not grieved for the affliction of Joseph. In other words, they're not paying attention to the desperate state of their nation. And they're not grieved for the sin that they see. They're not grieved for the loss that they see, for the breaches that foreign nations have made, for the gigantic threat of the Assyrians that's gathering. They're just partying. They're happy. They got plenty of money. Everything's fine. I wonder if that same trap is available to us today as we look around our nation and we try real hard to pretend like everything's okay, but we see affliction all around us. We see sin, we see unbelief, we see just the darkness that comes with a life apart from God all around us. And so remember what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, "Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted." Let's not be like the people of Israel. Let's not have the prophet say to us that they're not grieved for the affliction of Joseph. We need to look around and see the sad state of so many around us. And we need to let that drive us to compassion and to prayer, to pray for them, to lift the people up that need Jesus in their life so desperately. And I just want to encourage you to do that. Don't let it drive you to despair, but to be grieved and to let that drive you to prayer. That's what God wants from all of us. God bless you. Have a great day.